I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution. Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast. I'm the catalyst and my name is Lanre Olusola. And this is your go-to space for practical mind transforming conversations that empower you to overcome all of life's biggest challenges. This is where transformation meets truth and purpose ignites destiny. Today, we're talking about redesigning the African family, breaking cultural bondages, and building family legacy. I am absolutely honored to host my brother from the same spiritual father and the same spiritual mother, Pastor Taiwo and Pastor Bimbo Odukoya. I've known Praise Fowowe for over 2 decades, and we are cut from the same spiritual cloth. So Praise Fowowe's mission is to build a global network of empowered family life coaches, community leaders, and professionals who are absolutely equipped with culturally tailored solutions to create positive societal change across Africa and across the entire world. He addresses the root causes of family struggles and mental health issues. He helps families build resilience and he helps them develop self sustainability and prepare them for future generations. Now, he's a thought leader and a global pioneer who reshapes the very, very foundation of family life with revolutionary solutions that address the unique challenges that are faced by Africans and Black communities across the world. He's got over 2 decades of transformative experience and he has made impact across the world. He's a trusted advisor for governments, large religious organizations, academic institutions, and community leaders globally, providing cutting edge innovations, coaching, training, and mentorship that delivers very tangible results. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome my brother, welcome my friend, Praise Fowowe to my platform. And here we're going to have real, meaningful and deep conversations. Praise, welcome to my podcast. How are you today?
Good to be here, Coach. It's hearing you talk about me. And my mind just went back to many years ago, over 20 years ago. And I think God has really been faithful. And look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
Grateful. So good to be.
God is absolutely faithful. And look, guys, I kid you not. When we are talking about family systems, right, there's none other that can really deal with this issue of praise for all across the world. So let's dig into it so that you guys can begin to eat from his wealth of wisdom. So Praise, first question is, what is an ideal, functional, successful family system as an African?
Well, an ideal family system is one that leverages what I call the superpower in your ancestry and then shapes your identity, and then you use that to create a future that is authentic and that speaks to your core essence, such that you are able to pass the message that has been placed in your family for generation now and generation unborn. That's exactly what it is. Over the years, it's interesting to note that Africans have been scripted to run away from their ancestry. In the last 2 years, I have interfaced with maybe over 500,000 Africans. And every time in the room that I ask for someone to tell me about the man in the fifth generation before they were born, less than 1% of the room is able to clearly articulate that. And it's very sad. And then you're wondering, why don't they know the person in the fifth generation? It was because they've been scripted that the man was demonic, the man was fetish, and so culture was not passed from one generation to the other. history was not articulated. And the people without a history and people without an identity is the people that is truly lost. And so you find a situation where the typical African is not even aware of the superpower in their ancestry. And so because they've been scripted to run away from it, they have no sense of identity. And so every time you see low self-esteem, insecurity, every time you see a young girl marry the wrong person or the young guy marry the wrong person, you can literally trace it to a lost identity. And so the moment your identity is lost, other thing is lost because you're now going to be feeding your essence based on maybe what the religious space has told you or what someone else is telling you, which doesn't speak to your authenticity. So someone is going to craft your story and tell you who you're not. And so at the end of the day, you'd realize that you play second fiddle everywhere you go to. You apologize for who you are. And then when they call you what you don't like, you get upset about it, but you can't even defend it because you don't even know who you are. And so what we're saying right now is if we say that the most important nation on earth is your family, because your family is the production factor of the society, we need to begin to understand that there was greatness in Africa. In fact, the first world power was Africa, was the Egyptian system, right? And so we begin to say to people that there is nothing that is wrong about our past that what is right about us cannot correct. And so we need to leverage on our superpower for people to begin to understand that there was so much in our history that define who we are. That if we understand it and build it into an effective system, then we have something to actually give to the world that they've never witnessed before. So, in a nutshell, basically, it's saying that the way forward is actually the way backward. That when we go back into our ancestry, because our ancestry shows us who we are, it tells us the superpower that is placed in our lineage, because that is the key factor you need to build any effective system. If you have lost your superpower or you don't know what it is, there is nothing to build really. You are just going to be dancing to maybe motivational speaking or maybe what people are teaching you that you are the son of Abraham. That's just what you're going to be dancing to. Your authenticity is going to be lost and your children won't be able to relate because everything you're telling them, they can't, the person doesn't look like them. They just know that you have just fabulated and created a story that is not real. Our authenticity is who we are. And that is what defines the kind of family we need to create.
This is deep. This is deep. So we've talked about that ideal African family system, right? You talked about superpower. You talked about ancestry. You talked about history. You talked about scripting. You talked about identity. You talked about authenticity. Now, let's separate, that ideal African family system from that ideal functional and successful Western family system. What is the difference between both?
You know, systems intelligence is it's similar when it comes to its functionality. And there is no culture that is superior to another culture. Every culture is unique. Someone who has studied all kinds of cultures, fascinated at the dynamics of culture. And it's interesting to note that the only difference between us and them is documentation, their capacity to document history, and their ability to create a narrative that fits into the agenda they want to promote. And I'll give you an example. So I was asked to deliver a lecture on legacy in America, leveraging the ancestral gods of various nations. And so my subject matter was Zeus. And so I did a study on Zeus, and I realized that everything the Greeks had to say about Zeus were powerful articulations about his supremacy. They never talked about his weaknesses, but in my study, I found his weaknesses, about 4 different weaknesses. And so I was rounding up my presentation, and I instinctively decided to do a study on Shango and then Amadioa. And I found out that the strength of Zeus were the same strengths that was documented that Shango and Amadioha had. And they had the same set of weaknesses. So it dawned on me that what they have done was to project the supremacy of the strength of Zeus, while what we have done is to reduce Shango to some guy that we just pour red oil on, right? And we are not articulating the strength, the superpower that guy wielded because someone told us that something was wrong. And so take the concept of Eshu, for example, from if you are a Yoruba person, Eshu is called Satan. Meanwhile, Eshu was never Satan. Because originally, ancestrally, there were families. If Eshu was Satan, then there won't be families that will answer Eshu be. Because Eshu was akin to the bright and morning star, was God's servant that went on God's behalf to avenge his enemies and punish the people who were offending God. But because Eshu was being worshipped, when it came to colonize, when they were going to make us to become Christians, our people did not stop worshiping Eshu. And so they had to now turn the Eshu to Satan, so that every time you read about Satan in the Bible, you thought it was Eshu. And so the damage that has done to an entire generation. And I'll tell you a story. So when I finished that presentation, one of my mentees in America who went for a seminar spoke to me and he said, "Oh, Praise, do you know, let me tell you a story. I went for this seminar and I didn't have money to pay for accommodation. And I met a woman who came to me and said God told her to get accommodation for 2 people, right? And that the God told her that someone was coming who didn't have accommodation. So she got accommodation for 2 and met her. So the following morning, instinctively, she asked her, who is your God? This was a white woman. And she said she was an Ifa worshiper. And so this girl, who is a Yoruba girl, froze and said, Ifa worshiper. That Ifa is from my country, Nigeria. The woman said, from University of Columbus, that she got to know about Ifa. And I was Ifa that actually told her to get. And so she felt embarrassed. And so you realize that what they have done is to build a framework, build a structure, and create a narrative that fits to the agenda that they want to promote. What we have done is to run away, is to fail to document who we are. So it's basically documentation and the articulation of the ideology that they want to promote. So if you ask every nation of the world, when it comes to the concept of family, they have what they want you to know, what they want you to believe, what they want to project. For example, we are Bible students here. The family of Jacob is a dysfunctional family, right? That guy if you read him without the mind of a Christian, that was a reckless guy who married 2 sisters and also still impregnated their house helps or whatever, right? That's the story. But the way he was presented in the Bible, eventually God said that's his firstborn, and then Israel became a great nation. His name was changed, right? The story will almost fit in perfectly. It will almost sound like a very sweet story until you shake your... Now, if an African tells the story, it will be called a reckless. And if you look at David in the Bible, the narrative was a man after God's heart. If an African does that, the guy will be an outcast, literally. So you can literally see that it's the creation of a narrative that fits an agenda and that promotes the wellness of these people. That's basically the difference. So when Africans now they own their narrative, they own our own structures, our infrastructure, and our system, and begin to project who we are. And I do that a whole lot. When they ask me to talk about my ancestry in the West, I get into the room, I tell them about the greatness of the Benin Kingdom. I tell them the fact that he had a semblance of street lightning before New York, that he had a wall that was big. I say these things and they are looking at me in the room and then they want to know more about me. So basically it's documentation. Once you don't document, you don't have what to project. And if you don't have what to project, they will create a story that is not you for you. And then they will define you by who they want you to be. And then you will be a servant for the rest of your life. So basically it's documentation.
Wow, this is deep. This is deep. Viewers, I hope you're learning something. Now, Praise, what are the top 3 cultural mindsets or practices in African families today that you believe must be unlearned immediately to break generational bondages?
Okay, that's a very interesting concept. And so when we define culture, we say that culture is the way of life of the people at every point in time. And so if that is the real definition of culture, then the question is, you want to ask, who were the creators of culture? What was the exposure level when culture was created? And then what was the agenda? And then is this culture still serving our best interest? So for example, the concept that says that a woman is inferior to a man, it's something that is, we're a patriarchal society. And so sometimes it feels as if women are meant to be seen and not meant to be heard. right? And so that's something we need to really unlearn, because we need the best of us to lead the rest of us. So that's one thing. The other thing is, when we have a culture that says the old man is always right, even when the old man is outrightly wrong. And that is what has held us bound, where you have the old man who has lived his own life. He's lived the life of his own children. He's living the life of his grandchildren. He's still going to live the life of his great-grandchildren. And nobody can challenge him. That by the time the next generation is come to pass the baton, they can't, they already hold. And the third one I'll talk about is our concept and definition of leadership, wherein we have an adage that says in Africa that an elephant cannot blow at the same time with his son, right? It's an adage in Africa. And that's what has defined our leadership, even within the family system. The question I'm asking is, why can't father elephant blow treble? Let mother elephant blow tenor. Let son elephant blow alto. Let daughter elephant blow bass. So that beautiful harmony can be formed. That we can all find expression at whatever level we find ourselves. I don't have to be waiting and put me in the queue and say, okay, when TC has finished doing his own, then it will be your turn. By the time TC is done, maybe it's 90. I'm already 70. I'm already 80. Right? That we can collaborate and find expression. And the interesting thing I found in unlearning some of this negative or disempowering custom, that originally we were not like that. They were actually things that was taught to us through colonization, because we couldn't have built the pyramids and the great empire we built without collaboration. So at some point, something happened. And all the civilizations I studied in Africa, from the Mansa Musa to the Egyptian, to the Ashanti, there is something that is common to all. All of them imploded from within. So it means at some point, instead of collaboration, a group wanted to find expression, and because they're not giving them expression, they decided to sabotage the group from within. So everything collapsed from within before outside external people came to finish the work. And so this culture that says everybody must join a queue, and then one person must be the one, the alpha and the omega of all, it's something we need to unlearn, because unfortunately the younger generation are not that patient. Now they use AI. So we have to understand that at certain level, we have to step aside and allow them take the lead, while we provide historical concept and we provide a sense of direction for them. And when they get into excesses, we will understand that we've also been like that, and we'll be able to understand them better and sit with them, because in the Yoruba culture, we say that the wisdom of the old and the young is what gave birth to the land called Ile-Ife. That is what we now need to hold on to as a people. There cannot just be the old people who are always wise. No, there's the young person, right? We can provide historical concept. They can build it into a framework, turn it into AI, and then we can conquer the world together. So those are the three I can directly come to mind that we need to unlearn, so that we can unleash the potential of the African family.
Wow. So you talked about the future being, synchrony and collaboration between women and men.
Yes.
You talked about synchrony between the old and the young. You talked about synchrony between the leader and the follower. That is so profound. Another question that I have for you is, what does a redesigned African family truly look like? Spiritually, emotionally, economically, and relationally.
Okay, so the redesigned African family must be built on systems. So our families have been built in emotion over the years, and that has not helped us. Emotions in the sense that sometimes you get beaten for what you don't even understand that you did. I'm sure everyone in my generation will remember maybe their parents beat them for something they can't even remember what exactly it was they did. And then the punitive measure for that offense was not even predetermined before they were punished. So it came at the discretion of whatever your father felt was right. And then when the father did what was wrong, nobody was beating him. And so you find a situation where we are responding to emotion. You can't build anything if you're just responding to emotion. The whole world is built on precision. And so our redefined family must now be built on a system. And in the system, you must create what we call the governance system of your family. Now, within the governance system, you have your family vision. Every redesigned African family must have a clear vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. Now, what that means is that there must be a clear articulation of the desired end that you want this family to become, right? And then from the family vision, you need to create your family value. to say what values will define us as a family. That must be in place. And it must be known to everyone, right? Number 3, your values must become your DNA creed. A DNA creed is turning your values into a statement that governs human behavior, right? It's almost like your family pledge, right? And then after that, you do what we call the legends of your family, which is the clear historical concept that talks about what your family stands for, how your family got to where they are, and the superpower within your family. You know, interesting thing was that if you read, every family, like I said, has a superpower, but not many people have discovered theirs. If you read Matthew chapter 1, spiritually now as Christians, you would see that that chapter was full of the genealogy of Jesus. Now, we read it, is very boring, but that chapter was saying something that many people fail to understand, right? There is the prostitute in that lineage. Her name was Rahab. Now, everybody will look at that and say, oh, Rahab was there. No, Rahab was a typology of the superpower that exists in that lineage. What was Rahab's highest manifestation? She saved the spies that were sent to go and check Jericho thereabout. So she was a type of savior. There was the guy called Judah in that same lineage who impregnated his son's wife. You can look at him and look at his misdeed. But then one of his highest manifestations was the fact that when they were going to kill Joseph, it was the guy who said, no, don't kill him. Let's put him in a pit. That was a form of savior. So if you look at all the names and the characters leading to Jesus, they were saviors at a lower level before he got to him. So it was a superpower of savior that chapter was articulating. The same way, every family has got, if you mention the Anikulapos, you know that they are activists. That's their superpower. If you mention some families, you know it's industry. In fact, some families that their forefathers was an Ifa priest, that is a prophetic family because the gift and the calling of God is without repentance. It just depends on how you articulate it. So you need an articulation of your history called family legend. Now, when you have all these 4 together, you will now begin to now create your family culture. To now say, okay, to achieve our vision, what are the annual activities that we must do as a family, right? And one of the annual activities I usually recommend for, especially people in diaspora, is what we now call Taste of Africa. Taste of Africa is we cook our soups and get people to come and we tell stories about our soups and what it means. So in America, for example, you find black soup in my house. When people are sick and they have flu, tell them come and they say in Africa, this is healing. Right? So some of them take it and they're like, oh, this was so good. You know, I just realized I became well. That's one of the ways you can market your culture. So you need to create annual event. You need to create biannual event. You need to create quarterly event, monthly event, weekly event, and daily event. That is what becomes your family customs that fits into your vision. Now, when you have done all of this, you now need to create your family constitution. Your constitution is a documented code that enshrines to-dos, not to-dos, your taboos, your spirituality, your altars. I mean, there is an entire framework for that. Now, why are you doing all of these things? The people that handed over to us did not articulate and document all these things. So there was nothing to read, right? And so in the absence of what to read, we have to read what came to us from America or what came to us from Israel, right? And so I'm saying to Africans right now that if you are leading a family, you need to posture yourself as the ancestor of a new generation of Africans. And to be an ancestor, you have to take responsibility to document, do your family constitution, because you see, we will struggle to live it out, but the generations coming after us will learn by observation, and then they will teach it to their children. You know, what Chinese people do, or the collaboration of the Indians, right? It's the articulation and the building into framework of a system that has now defined them, that is codified in their celebration. So when the Indians celebrate Diwali, people think it's just an ordinary celebration. Go and look at the content of Diwali and what they have to do every day of Diwali. You would see it's a conditioning process, right? And so it's not a fluke that many of the Fortune 100 companies have an Indian CEO. It's a conditioning, right? It's not a happenstance. It's intentional, right? The same way, we need to articulate and put these things in a subliminal manner that can bypass conscious resistance and our people can live it out. Now, when we document it, there will be a generation that will now live it out, and that generation becomes a new epistle that others can now observe them because they now know who an African should be, what an African family should look like. So these are the frameworks that we now need to put in place. And once we put it, and that's what we're teaching people. If you put that in place, your children will have what to read, and then you can create family museum, which talks about, so for example, what shoe did TC wear when he started his business? When God called him out of engineering to come and do what he's doing right now, healing the mind, where was he? What shirt was he wearing? Those can be, even if we can't build a physical museum, we can create virtual museum right now, so that generations unborn, they can watch the ancestor TC, right? Maybe it will be 500 years down the line. You will not be here. They can watch it. They can use virtual augmented reality and watch and say, oh, this was the man. You become like the Abraham. God told Abraham, get thee out of thy father's house. We were not there, but we believed it nevertheless. So if you document your experience, the generations unborn can feed on it and know that, oh, if you belong to the Olusolas, you cannot do this, right? This is who you need to be. And who knows, if that is sustained, a time will come, they will just be doing the Olusola nation, because the descendants will now be scattered all over. That one day, maybe on your birthday, posthumous birthday, they are now doing our national day, which is the Olusola Day, which was the day this family was born. Every family has got potential to become a nation. If the dysfunctional family of Jacob becomes the nation Israel, then every family has got all it takes to become a nation. So that is the new order that we now need to embrace and learn, because learning systems for Africans is very tough, because it's easier for us to be emotional than for us to be systemic.
This is so, so, so deep, because you're talking about intentionality. You're talking about us being deliberate to redefine our own family systems, right? You have to choose systems instead of emotions. You have to put governance systems in place: vision, mission, purpose, values, DNA creed, legend, and constitution. You have to put all of that together to create what you call your family culture and constitution. Wow, this is deep. This is deep. So, Praise, how do you draw the line between preserving cultural identity and breaking toxic cultural patterns that are destroying our families? So, on one end, we're talking about creating our cultural identity. On the other end, how do we break toxic cultural patterns? How do we even identify those cultural patterns? How do we break them? Because they are the very, very, virus that is destroying African families.
It's very so, and I love the fact that you use patterns and not causes. Because people don't know that what they call causes are also pattern, right? And so when it comes to in the form of pattern, it becomes very easy to deal with, right? But when you see causes, then some people can build an entire monument, an entire enterprise around it, and just be milking the people, right? The only problem is that they don't know exactly at what point they will be finally delivered. So the thing about patterns is, and it's very easy to identify. I always say you just need to filter it through one test. How well does it promote the dignity of humanity? Anything you call culture, customs, pattern that does not promote the dignity of humanity must go. And you need to take that decision, no matter, for example, you have some customs where when somebody dies, then they will bury another person with him. How does that? Why would you cut off the life of another person simply because another person died? And you say, oh, the person will follow him into the great beyond. What great beyond is following person following? That is not something that is empowering, right? And so we have to understand that many of the things that our forefathers did, they did it in that dispensation. And they are no longer relevant because life is progressive, right? And so you look at the ways they fought war. Incidentally, I just finished studying the Kiriji War, all right? And it's interesting how what they call that war was actually the same thing like Moses was doing in the Bible, possessing the land. And those things happen as I then because there wasn't the legal system through which you can resolve issues. So it was a survival of the fittest. Now, you cannot bring that into this age and time and say you just want to go and invade a village and kill the people. That's not going to work because there's the human rights. And so the same way, we need to begin to look into our family and begin to ask. So if you have a family custom that says that if your son gets married, you as the father, you are the first to sleep with his wife, right? You ask yourself, does this promote the dignity of the lady? Does it promote the wellness of your son? Does it promote the mental health of these people? Does it even look good on you? If the answer is no, then you have to be the one to say, you know what, we can no longer continue with this. And you see, the fear is people will say, oh, it was instituted. If you change it, somebody is going to die. No, human beings instituted it, not spirit, right? And so people need to understand that. When Bob Marley says emancipate yourself from mental slavery, all these things is in your mind. It's the same way, the way I come from, they would say, oh, in Africa, somebody can call somebody in the middle of the night 3 times, and the person will just answer and the person will die. Right? You will know that for these things to work, both you and the person that you are calling must believe it. Right? So if somebody doesn't believe it, it has no effect on you. A costless has no effect. So it's the same way someone has got to stand up. That's why I think it's the era of new ancestors in African culture, right? Who can stand and become progressive and know that if you have a culture that says that the male child must go to school, the female child must not go to school, how does that help the dignity of the female child? Or if you have a culture that says the life of the male child, you have some people that have 2 girls or 3 girls, and they are looking for a male by force because there is a culture or custom that says it is the male child that must continue. What if that boy is an armed robber? What family lineage is it going to continue? So we need to filter it through how it passes the test of respect for humanity, promotion of human dignity. Anything that cannot pass that test has got to go. It's only the things that fit into that needs to remain. And that's a simple way to test these things and filter it and then embrace what can move us forward.
Wow. So you talked about us visiting the past for us to create a new future. So there are many lies and very dangerous lies that have been told African parents, and we
Mm,
still believe about
mm.
parenting and about gender roles. So what are those dangerous lies those myths, those things that we need to get rid of?
Okay, for example, and I still see people teach it. Men are logical, women are emotional. That's an error. Every human being has got emotions and logic. The one you utilize the most is the one that becomes very pronounced. And so when you need logic to fire a non-performing staff, all right. And so a woman in the boardroom will use more of logic. And so a lot of men can't stand such women and they say, "Oh, he's behaving like a man." Unfortunately, they don't even know that the concept of manhood is not gender centric originally. Man who is humanity or mankind expressed in 2 gender, male and female, right? And the people are still teaching that men are logical and women are emotional, and they're teaching error, and that has put a lot of people in trouble. And people still teach that the first thing of a man is respect, the first thing of a woman is love. I keep asking, is there any man who doesn't want to be loved? Is there any woman who doesn't want to be respected? Right? These are human needs, human things that everybody needs. So why are we always looking for this in the, and then there's another one that they teach even in church that says any man that cannot provide for his household is worse than an infidel. That's not even in the Bible. The word there is if any or if anyone. There's no man there. And that scripture was not even talking about marriage. It was talking about care for widows. That if you have any widow in your house and then you have the means and you can't provide, you are worse than an infidel and you have denied the faith. But a lot of women have used that to molest their men and say you are irresponsible and you can't provide and all those things. That's not in the Bible. And you have all sorts of these things. You hear things like a woman is a homemaker. There is no woman that can make any home that a man has vowed to destroy. Right? Men and women has got to be homemakers. You hear things like when a man is cleaning his house, he says he's helping his wife. It's not helping his wife. It's a wrong narrative. He's keeping his house clean. He's babysitting. He says he's helping his wife. Whose child is he babysitting? You are babysitting your child. You are helping yourself. You are not helping your wife. So these are narrative that people have taught over time, and it's because many of the people who teach these things, right, they mix culture with scripture, and it now looks like revelation. And so they damage more people, and because when you begin to project some of these things. I mean, I always tell people, for example, in my family, I am more emotional than logical. My wife is more logical than emotional, right? And so if you go by men are logical, women are emotional, it doesn't work. It doesn't fit into our own construct. And these are things that we need to, maybe the people who teach these things from the pulpit needs to sit down in a classroom and understand that nothing is more damaging to a new truth than an old error. That this error has served a purpose, served a generation. And where it came from was because after the, I think, first industrial revolution or something, no, after the First World War, which was when the concept of breadwinner started from, they said the women should stay at home, let the men go to work. And so when they ran the survey in that era, women were not in the boardroom, they were sitting at home. So it was normal for them to emerge as more emotional than logical. Men were going to kill ants in the bush. They were more logical, right? But then with latest research has now proven that every human being even has the feminine and the masculine side anyways. So you all have both. And so there is no need to keep entrenching an error that is not correct. And so some of these are some of the things that people have taught over time that I think we need to totally move away from if we are to fully help our people. And then when people say that, every woman must submit, no, that's not even in the Bible. It's wife that must submit to their own husband. It's not every woman can, my wife cannot be submitting to my gate man, for example. It's your, so, and submission is a human thing, really. It's not gender centric. Submit one to another in the fear of the Lord was there. People overlook that anyone who has demonstrated superior competence in any area, is the person we must defer to. So if your wife is a better money manager, why would you be trying to manage money when you don't even know what to do with money? When we begin to embrace the truth, embrace empowering knowledge, then we will be able to build robust people. Because what we have right now is that some of these self-sabotaging beliefs has weakened, our women, and maybe sometimes weakened the men. And that's why we're always looking for women empowerment and men empowerment, because we always want it to be, it's a man's world, it's a man, when it can actually be our world. And at the level of our world, we can collaborate. We need both people to be strong, right? For them to build an wholesome family. But when you weaken somebody with some form of narrow-mindedness, at the end of the day, the family suffers for it.
Wow. Wow. This is deep. This is deep. So African families are secretly being torn apart.
Hmm.
And you often speak about root causes. So what are the root causes? What are the foundational dysfunctions that we are ignoring today that are secretly tearing our African families apart?
You see, my answer may offend a few people, but you'll pardon me because it wasn't meant to offend you. I think every system that is designed is intentionally designed for us to lose our Africanness and embrace who we're not. And sometimes we say it, whether Christianity or Islam, it was designed to, for lack of a better word, make us take on another culture that is not our culture. And we are killing ourselves over that culture, right? And so you find out that the moment and I'll give an example. I was working with a lady whose husband was beating her, domestic violence. And instinctively, I asked her to tell me about her great grandfather. And she didn't know about him because her father never told her about him. So I asked her to go do that research and do it to the fifth generation. You know what they found out? The man in the fifth generation was a king. And so he was supposed to hand over the throne to his son, who was the great great grandfather. But then his son became a Christian. And he was told that being a Christian, it cannot be a king because he will be taking on fetish things. So he ran away from that village and they didn't know where he ran to. Ran to another town and started life afresh there as a normal human being. Now, gave birth to a son who was a grandfather, great grandfather, a son who became the grandfather and then to her father. Now, by the time he was getting to her, the concept of them being royalty was totally lost. Now, imagine if that concept was not cut off, that history was not torn apart. She would have ended up a princess. And if you know royalties don't allow their children to marry just anybody. right? And so the awareness that he was a royalty could never have brought her at par with the guy she eventually married. So you can see how a fractured history can affect people's choices in modern day times, and it can, totally mess them up. Right. And so what we need to understand is that a lot has happened. I mean, pre-colonial Africa, we had our African values. In fact, we had what looks like our fattening room, which was the room where we prepare our people for adulthood. Right? You knew what you needed to get married. You couldn't just show up jobless and say you want to get married as an African. They want to check the size of your band, right? To know if you are capable, right? As a lady, you knew that virginity was a thing of pride. And so what has happened over time is, as colonization and civilization starts to occur, right, we now begin to define ourselves by whatever happens in America. So if an American says to his father, don't be stupid, we want to say don't be stupid to our fathers. If an American girl, is opening her breast, we want to open our breast. If an American man, we want to do the same, because now the world is a global village. And because our culture is not documented, nobody even knows the purest version of it. That in colonization, India and Nigeria were colonized by Britain. But you know why Christianity and Islam couldn't penetrate India? Was because India had their own religion that they created by themselves. Hinduism is from India. Buddhism is from India. They have it. It's been proven now that the most difficult cultures to break are the cultures whose religion is their culture and whose culture is their religion. So you look at Judaism, you look at, even in China, 87% of Chinese practice the Chinese traditional religion, which is a combination of Shintoism, Buddhism, and one other religion like that, right? And so because religion governs the way of life of a people. And so when Jews talk, Judaism is their culture, is also their religion. The same thing with Indians. So they have their Lord, they call Lord Shiva in Hinduism, right? If you check all their manifestations, there's a merger of their culture and their religion. Come to Africa. We have our culture, which we don't know. Then we have a religion that is not ours. So at the end of the day, you don't know whether you're an Olusola or you are a descendant of Abraham, right? So there is confusion in what we are ingesting and what is being taught to us. And so when that happens, you are confused at the realm of your identity. So on one hand, there are behaviors, there are tendencies you have, which is innate in you, wanting to manifest itself, but you have to suppress it because it doesn't align with the new thing you are being given. So at the end of the day, you are almost totally messed up inside of you. And that's why, observe, ask an African to introduce themselves. You notice that they can't say one thing. Ask them what do they do. They can't tell you one thing they do. They always mention like 3 things at the same time, right? These are symptoms of a deeper issue, which is identity crisis. That you don't even know who you are, and let alone know what you can do. And so until we get back to begin to say, who are we really? And to embrace who we are, to promote who we are, and then to get back into what am I capable of doing, right? We will not be able to solve this problem. And what we need to do, a new generation has got to arise as African, which is why I love what you are doing. You are bringing awareness to the African culture, to the African continent, to say there is nothing wrong about us. There is nothing wrong about being African. Our pigmentation does not depict the stupidity. It doesn't mean we are inferior. If our ancestors, who we say were not educated, they built a wall that was greater than the Great Wall of China. These guys, I went to Benin, I bought the bronze work. They made bronze work that was stolen. If those things were not powerful, you know the interesting thing? They will tell you these things are demonic, throw them away, but they stole them and put them in museums as artifacts. If those things, if they could build something that was solid enough to be stolen, then you can't tell me that those guys are illiterate, right? It's just that they understand their own education is totally different, the way they learn, is totally different from the others. But the goal of education is mastery, right? They master what they know and they know it very well. And they were able to also do international trade way back. And so we need to now begin to check what our government is projecting. Enough of what we have been given that is not working for us. Our educational system is not designed to retain your Africanness and to produce the best that you have within you. Every right-thinking nation, the first question they ask before they design an educational system is, who do we want our citizens to become? And how do you want them to think? When you answer those two questions, when you design a curriculum, they don't design a curriculum and just let people go through it, because there are courses we are taking that we don't have the effect. We don't know what we're going to do with them. We don't know the application of it. We will never need them, right? Meanwhile, the one boy system of the Igbo has already told us, taught us practically that you can become anything through the apprenticeship system, which has worked very well for the African. So why are we not embracing that in our educational system, right? If you check our religion, why is our religion pattern around Africa, when actually we can design our own Christianity and God won't even have a problem with it, right? In fact, it's now been proven that Africa has the semblance of Azusa through the Apostle Babalola that was indigenous, right? So why are we always trying to make ourselves feel like something is wrong with us? So we travel abroad for seminars abroad. We go for a pastor's retreat. When are they going to come to us to come and learn what works? Yet the largest church auditoriums are in Africa, right? It means there is something about us that is working that we are not even sure of. There is the spirit of the African which cannot be broken. We have survived in the harshest of conditions. Come to America, see our guys in the factory. Sometimes some of them don't even have documentation. Yet they're able to send money home. They're able to build houses. They're able to build a family. They're able to send children to Ivy League schools. They don't even get into loans. That's the power of the African. It's the power to say we can achieve whatever we want to achieve. Our spirit cannot be broken. There is no space, no sector that you won't find an African who is doing well. Just give us some time. We can get there from the lower ground, but give us some time. That is the African spirit. So our government, maybe democracy is not going to work for us. Maybe we need to find what works for us, but we need to design our system to suit the African and produce the best of African. That's what I think we need to return to. And it will start from the family. It will get into governance. It will get into religious space. Everything has got to be designed to produce the best of the African.
Wow. If there's any African out there that is listening to this message is for you. Embrace your Africanness. Embrace your ancestry. Embrace your authenticity and your identity. You have a superpower. Manifest it. So, two more questions, praise, and I'll take them quickly. Talking about fathers, what is the role of a father in rebuilding and restoring the African family? What is the role of the father in rebuilding and restoring that authentic, ideal, successful, functional African family?
Fatherhood is the word source, right? Which means if you go into the Hebrew of father, is the word hab. Ab is a grammatical construct that must have something to go with it. So if you say Absalom, father of peace, right? Abraham, father of nation. So fatherhood is source, the source of inspiration, source of direction. So it's a role that you need to step into, and it has role description. African fathers must understand that the damage that we are talking about, we caused it, right? And the restoration of Africa is dependent on us. They say, fix the man in the nation, and the nation will be fixed, right? And so we need to take responsibilities. And trust me, I don't mean perfection. You don't have to be perfect. It's a sense of responsibility to say, you know what, I'm going to take on this responsibility, because you're the progenitor, you are the one that donates the seed, right? And so I am going to go back. Every African father listening to me, you see, Your father's response to you was pain, was anger. Your response to your children has got to be love. And so many of us have been tortured, brutalized. We were not even brought up normally. You couldn't express emotions because you were taught to keep it within you, because manhood was equated to your ability to hold it together and not cry. And so many of us have grown up to become monsters. And I dare say that almost all of us need a sense of healing. We need to go through therapy. We need to, and that's why the work that TSTC is doing is incredible. We need to be de-radicalized such that we are back to what it means to be humane again. Many of us have become human things and human doing. We have become beasts of burden. We're just working, and providing money so that others, that we're not even taking care of ourselves. And that's why data has shown that a lot of African men die faster than their wives, right? We need to quit being superheroes. Can we be human again? Can we get back to that place where we surrender ourselves for therapy to say, you know what, I think I'm not normal. I need help. Because in your healing and wholesomeness is how we can rebuild the foundation of the family. When the foundation is destroyed, what can the righteous do? You are that foundation. And once you are compromised, your child is going to observe you. We need to admit there are things we don't know, and we need to get into classes. I mean, it's sad that every time you call a meeting that can move the family forward, 98% attendees are women. And you ask, where are the men? Check any therapist at all in Africa and ask them, what are the percentages of people showing up for healing, for wholeness? You find 80% women. Where are the men? We
Wow.
cannot be arrogant about what is not working. If you don't know it, you don't know it. And you're going to shipwreck and sabotage your family. So we need to admit that we are in pain and submit ourselves for therapy so that we can heal. Because once you heal, you are able to reclaim your identity. And in reclaiming your identity is the key to transforming your family. Because if you get it right, your child will learn love, service, dignity, and responsibility from what they see you do, not even what you say. And nothing trumps the power of observation. So we have to model what is right for the younger generation. And that's how we can start the rebuilding process of Africa.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much. One last question. If you could give every African family one legacy building secret, what would it be?
One legacy building secret. You can't build a legacy without a history. Go back and find your history and own your history and rewrite it to speak to your greatness and your strength and not what was
Wow.
wrong about it.
Wow.
Because you have the power to control the narrative, right? So control your narrative and make it work for you.
Wow.
That's me.
That is so profound. Now, Praise, you are so busy, very, very busy. How do you relax?
If I tell people that I watch a movie every day, they don't believe me. I see a movie every day. Every day I must watch one movie. Because when I'm flying, I'm on the ground, I must see a movie. So I relax by seeing a movie, and I'm a yoga enthusiast. I meditate. I love meditation. I love yoga. And you say you can't take my power walks from me as well. I work early in the morning, and what I do is nature walk. So it relaxes me because I'm observing the birds. I'm observing and I do stargazing every night as well. I love to count the stars, and that's the way I relax because our work can be very stressful. And people tell me I don't look my age, and I tell them it's because my stress level is very low because I've learned how to distress, which is must be part of what must be part of your routine. And when they look at me and they're like, you don't look your age, you don't even have gray hair. I say, well, I know that what we have is this body. And you know what? I'm very careful about what goes into my mouth as well. So it's a discipline that we need to embrace. But much more than that, I watch movies, especially comedies, because it makes me laugh a lot.
Wow, this is so profound. I want to thank you for sharing from your wealth of wisdom. If this conversation has blessed you, don't keep it to yourself. Make sure that you share this podcast with everybody that you know. On that note, we'll call it a wrap for tonight. We'll call it a wrap for today. We'll call it a wrap for this morning, depending on what time of the day you're watching and you're learning from this podcast. So, praise. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you.
I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution.